Can you talk a little bit about the politics of that? What does that mean, the politics of that search?
Oh my goodness. Well, as I explained earlier with Robert Miller being the U.S. Attorney at the time, and Ken Finberg's assessment was that Mr. Miller was not going to allow an investigation at Rocky Flats because it might hurt jobs, which he has to be sensitive to. So that's somewhat political. Also, we're talking about one executive branch agency going after another. And from my understanding, that had not been done before. And I don't believe it's been done since, where a search warrant was executed by executive branch agency on another. The funding aspects of the Department of Energy were controlled by the military. So the military basically had this weapons need, and I'm sure they didn't want any problem with that. Well, it's the own assessment of the person that wrote the briefing memo for Mary L. Walker. Essentially, Rocky Flats could not operate legally. And when EG&G took over from Rockwell after Rockwell got fired, that's exactly what they told then Admiral Watkins, the Department of Energy Secretary. We can't operate this plant legally. And I've been out there, or I was out there, and I've reviewed the paperwork, and that's another political aspect of it. Gee, do you think maybe we could all talk together and work some things out, and maybe we can share some ideas? Oh no, we don't want to do that. The water people are compartmentalized, and the RCRA people were over here compartmentalized. And because then another political issue was the Waste Stream Identification and Characterization Report was stamped as UCNI, unclassified nuclear information, which doesn't have any meaning towards the National Security Act, but then President Reagan came up with this great idea so that now these 29 volumes were kept from the public view, and they were under lock and key at the Colorado Department of Health. So they had them. Did they open them? I don't know. If you were to ask me what I thought, I would say no. They never looked at them, or they just kind of thumbed through it. I mean, these are massive documents. And in fact, they're over at the Front Range Community College now. So if you want to go look at them. But you're talking about the processes of 400 buildings being isolated and analyzed, and then assessed, and then schematically flow charted out to where everything went. And it took me months to go through that. I remember it taking me a whole week to figure out the methodology and the reasoning why then Rocky Flats manager for DOE decided that their sewage treatment plant was a publicly owned treatment works under Clean Water Act, Title 33. I mean, it took me a week to figure out. It was like a one-page letter. And I'm like, it's like he made it fit on paper, but it was all political. This plant had to operate, and it said safety first on the water tower, but it wasn't. It wasn't. And there were restrictions placed on the plant on when they could allow the water to flow. I'm not talking about regular water, I'm talking about the industrial waste that included sanitary, industrial, hazardous, and radioactive waste. This stuff, there was a lot of controls, but they didn't follow it. And they didn't have to follow it because they could control people. They could control access, and they did. Even the EPA people sometimes, and I talked to Nat Mullo, M-I-U-L-L-O, great guy, but he was blindfolded several times. Oh, we're going to take you where you need to go, but from the front door to that point, you're going to be blindfolded, and they did. So it was not just smoke and mirrors, it was a lot of control.
Actually blindfolded?
They actually blindfolded them.
Physically blindfolded?
Yes.
The inspector.
And they had to guide them. And then the Ahern Committee, named after the chairman of the of the committee was, I believe, was Ahern. They went out in, what, 1988, and they walked through a whole dosage area in Building 771, and they weren't told about it. And that's kind of what precipitated the closure of the Building 771 in 88, in October 7th, 1988. So there's a lot of politics, and to get this off the ground was not easy. I mean, I had an agent who happened to be briefed because I was briefing the executive management of the office, come up to me after the briefing and said, "Well, I live out in Arvada. You can't do this. This is going to lower the property values of my home." I mean, even in-house, it was.
And that was in 88?
That was in 88. He was really concerned about that. Everyone's concerned about, themselves.
You think they were concerned in 88? Talk to them this week.
Pardon me?
They listened to him this week.
Why?
They'll tell you about property values. That's what the opposition's going to say to our side. There could be some truth to that.
Well, that's true. And we all have the ability to make choices, and some of us make good choices, some of us make bad choices, some of us intend to make good choices, and we end up falling flat on our face. I mean, it happened to me, it happened to you, everybody in this room. We can't fault the innocent for what transgressions have occurred in the past, and where we're headed right now is the school children are going to go out and picnic out there where there was a soup of dangerous chemicals that have not been removed completely.
How do you know they haven't been removed?
How do I know they haven't been removed? Well, my first point would be that, as I talked to you earlier, walk around, talk to people. I had a full access badge out at Rocky Flats, and I made it a point to go out to the 130 building probably once a week, even up through January of 1991. So it's over a year after the search. And I just chew the fat with people. These were the EG&G people that they were health environmentalist types. There was only like maybe 40 on the plant when we hit the place in 89. And then the thing swelled. The workers were almost gone, and now we had 400. I mean, they were bringing out trailers and just to backfill the 130 area. And, walking around talking to people, some people would strike up conversations, and I listened. Interesting stories, because they worked for EG&G and heard stories about Doc Eggerston on the timing of the first nuclear blast down at Trinity. Really interesting stories, and just the fact that he was the scientist that he was, and we just swapped stories. Well, one day I got grabbed, and one of the workers asked me, "I want to show you something. I'm going to answer your question, but I got to kind of build this up a little bit."